In Lagos, where glass towers rise like spears, one man closed his eyes, not to rest, but to see what was hidden. In the land where the lagoon kisses the belly of the earth, where smoke coils into the sky like ancestral spirits seeking memory, there stood a man whose shadow ruled Lagos. His name was whispered in ballrooms and in barracks, in courtrooms and council halls. They called him Chief Dyke Anansi, the man with the iron mind and the marble heart. He was not born of silver. No, he was chiseled from the stone of suffering, risen from ash, from hunger, from a mother's tears and a father's silence. Every block of his empire was built with scars, laid with silence, and sealed in sacrifice. And when he spoke, the earth did not shake, it stilled. But what the world saw, the gods did not envy. For though his vaults were filled with gold and his name printed in shining ink, the man himself was hollow. He had a wife, a beautiful thing shaped like the morning sun, radiant, soft, dangerous, Amara. And there was a boy not born of him, but raised by him, a child he plucked from a gutter, like an old coin, and polished with love until the boy shone like silver. His name was Sei, the orphan who became a son. Yet still, the house was cold. The kind of cold that has nothing to do with weather. A cold that lives in silk sheets, in the silence of shared dinners, in smiles that hold no warmth. And slowly, Dyke began to feel it. A tremor, a shift. First, it was the eyes that avoided his. Then the laughter that stopped when he entered. Then the scent on her skin. Unfamiliar, yet hauntingly close. The heart knows when it is being hunted, and Dyke's heart, though made of stone, began to whisper. He tried to pray, but prayers are for the innocent. He tried to ask, but truth has no voice in a house built on power. So, in the stillness of one Lagos night, while rain fell like beads from a broken necklace, Dyke disappeared. Not into hiding, but into knowing, far from the traffic and towers, past the toll gates and the noise of men. There's a path that bends like a snake, and only those with burdened souls find it. It leads to a hut that smells of camwood, cola nut, and forgotten time. There, behind curtains of cowries, sat the one known only as Nady the Nameless, a seer too old for calendars, too wise for titles. Some say he sees with the eyes of those not yet born. Others say he once blinded a king to save a kingdom. Dyke knelt before him, powerful yet powerless. "I want to see," he said. Nady stirred his calabash. Bones danced. "You already see," he replied, "but you see with eyes that lie." "I want to see without seeing," Dyke whispered. Then silence, the kind of silence that feels like thunder in the soul. The old man reached for a black powder, ground from the root of Nwinwu, the night plant, and blew it gently into Dyke's face. And suddenly, the world disappeared, not in darkness, but in stillness. "I have blinded you," Nady said, "but not from a world. I have only removed its mask. Now you will see truth. Not with these." He tapped the man's shut eyes. "But with these," he pressed his hand over Dyke's chest. "Your spirit shall be your eyes. But beware, the truth is never kind." When he returned to his home in Ikoyi, no one noticed anything amiss. His staff still bowed. His gate still opened. His wife still smiled. But now Dyke moved like the wind, unseen, silent, omnipresent. A man walking to the world with his eyes wide shut, and yet seeing everything. He watched his wife wear red lipstick only when he was away. He listened to the silence between footsteps. He heard laughter behind closed doors. He traced fingers that lingered too long on wine glasses not meant for one. And that night, the moon rose like a witness in the sky. The house, bathed in silver shadows, whispered secrets it could no longer hide. Dyke sat in the center of his room, blind but not lost. And in the stillness, he heard the soft rustle of silk. Amara danced, alone, but not for long. He returned home, eyes wide shut. And that night, his wife danced alone in silk. And so, the man who had once seen everything, oil fields stretching like rivers of fire, towers rising like spears, ministers trembling beneath his gaze, now wandered the halls of his own mansion with no need for sight. Not because he had lost his eyes, but because he had gained something older, the sight of spirits. the ears of ancestors, the weight of truth. In the stillness of his blindness, Dyke became a presence that did not need to be seen. He sat in corners the maids avoided, stood behind curtains where conversations grew careless, breathed silently where betrayals lingered like the scent of incense after prayer. And what he discovered was not noise. It was shifts, the delicate, sharp shifts of betrayal sharpening its teeth. His wife, Amara, no longer touched his food before he ate. She no longer asked the maids to warm his bath. She smiled, yes, but it was the smile of a dancer who no longer hears the drum of her husband's spirit. And the boys say, the orphan Dyke had saved from the roadside, a boy with ash on his lips and hunger in his eyes. A boy he sent to best schools, dressed in the best clothes, sheltered beneath the same roof, given a name, a future. Say now walked with the air of a man who had inherited something. His words were bolder. His laughter echoed a little too long. And sometimes when Dyke passed him in the hallway, their bodies did not touch, but something colder than ice brushed his soul. And still, Dyke said nothing. For the hunter does not shout in the forest. He listens. He waits. That night, the sky over Lagos was heavy. Even the stars hid their faces. The mansion in Ikoyi stood still, every chandelier frozen, every curtain heavy with secrets. Dyke sat in his study, hands resting on the lion-headed arms of his chair. He heard the clock tick, the owl call, the night weep, and then laughter. Soft, suppressed, sweet, but wrong. It came from the corridor, then to the stairs, then beyond the double doors of the master bedroom. And with it, footsteps, 2 pairs, a woman barefoot, a man unsure, and then the door creaked closed. Dyke stood, not with anger, not with heartbreak, but with the grace of a spirit that had finally caught its prey. He moved toward the bedroom, each step a drumbeat, each breath a sermon. He stopped just beside the door, a door carved with the names of 2 lovers on their wedding night, now guarding a secret too foul for daylight. He did not need to see. He needed only to listen. The bed creaked. The sheets whispered. A breathless giggle danced through the keyhole. Then a name, not his. Say, the name hissed through the silence like a serpent made of fire. Dyke closed his fists, not in fury, but in finality. And then came her voice again, not hesitant, not ashamed, but drunk on betrayal. I've waited for you. Say, laughed. A boy's laugh in a man's throat. And then silence, not peace, but the kind of silence that comes before ancestral storms. Dyke turned. The hallway stretched before him like the path to judgment. He walked it, slowly, without haste, without tears. The echoes of their sin bounced off the marble walls like war drums beaten by ghosts. And as they lay tangled in the sheets, she whispered his name, the wrong name. Some truths are not meant to be seen. Some betrayals burn through the soul like acid through cloth. There is a kind of silence only the gods understand. The morning after betrayal is never loud. It tiptoes in with sunlight, dresses itself in golden warmth, and pretends to be peace. But for Dyke, there was no peace, only presence, the heavy presence of what he had heard, and now what he must become. He had not spoken since the night his wife called another man's name, not because he lacked words, but because words are too small for certain wounds. And so he sat by the courtyard pond, blind in flesh but ablaze in spirit. The koi fish swam in circles, unaware that their world had shifted. But Dyke was not a fish. He was a man who had seen too deeply, and now he could not unsee. He had no rage. Rage was for those still clinging to the illusion of fairness. He had no tears. Tears are for children of hope. He only had knowing. And knowing is a kind of fire that does not warm. It consumes. The forest did not ask questions. It only opened, as if the trees remembered his footsteps from before. Dyke walked with no cane this time. His eyes remained shut, but the path before him seemed carved by memory. He moved past hanging vines and whispering leaves until the hut appeared again, the one wrapped in cowrie shells and ancestral smoke. Inside, Nady the Nameless sat waiting. His back was to the door, but his voice was ready. "You saw the betrayal," he said before Dyke entered. "Now you want your blindness undone." Dyke said nothing. Words were unnecessary between men who spoke in the language of suffering. "I warned you," Nady whispered, tossing another log into the fire. "To see truth is to carry its weight." "I am tired," Dyke finally said. "Not of blindness, but of burning." Nady turned. His face had changed, older now, as though he had absorbed a piece of Dyke's sorrow into himself. "To unsee," he said, "is to bury truth, but to see again is to suffer twice. Once for what was done, and again for what you became after." "I will carry it," Dyke replied. And so the ritual began. Nady placed a mirror between them. Not one of glass, but of polished obsidian stone. A mirror that did not reflect the face, but the spirit. He brewed from herbs that had no names in modern tongues. Roots in the tree of returning, crushed bones of a tortoise that never died, a feather from a crow that flew only by night. He painted Dyke's eyelids with ashes from his own house's earth. Then he whispered into the flame, "Spirit, return what flesh abandoned. Let his eyes see again, but let them carry no lies." A sudden wind stirred. The candles danced like they were afraid. Then stillness, and Dyke opened his eyes, not to light, but to memory. He remembered everything at once. The wedding day, Amara in ivory lace, her smile like a morning promise. The adoption papers, Say's name scribbled beside his own, a father to a son. The laughter, the dinners, the warm hand on his shoulder, the whispered, "Thank you," after graduation. Then the shift, the fading glances, the silence, the betrayal, and then the night of the sheets. Dyke gasped. Nady watched. "This is your sight now," the old man said. "It does not blink. It does not forget. It will not close again until you do what must be done." He returned home not as a man, but as a ghost of himself. He moved through his mansion with eyes wide open. Everything was the same, yet everything now spoke in a new language. The wine stains on the rug, the second wine glass in the living room, the new gold bracelet on Amara's dresser, too masculine to be hers, the faint cologne on Say's bedsheets, the same scent Dyke once gifted him. He walked past his wife that morning. She smiled falsely. "Good morning, my king." He nodded. She kissed his cheek. He said nothing. He walked past Say in the hallway. "Baba," the boy said. Dyke paused. Then, "You smell like betrayal." Say froze, but Dyke kept walking. That night, Dyke sat beneath the great baobab tree in his compound, the one his grandfather planted, the one his father died beneath. There, he opened a leather-bound book, his final will, not of money. That had already been sorted, but of meaning. To Amara, "I gave you a name that lit up cities. You chose to dim it. To say, I gave you blood that wasn't mine. You returned it with poison. To his servants, you watched me burn. You said nothing. To the world, you will not see me fall. You will watch me rise in absence." And on the seventh night, he opened his eyes, but said nothing. Power is not in punishing the wicked. Sometimes it's in walking away while they burn in their own shame. They say silence is the language of the gods. And on the seventh day, Ikeen spoke none of it. He woke as if born anew, not in body, but in soul. The air in his lungs no longer carried the weight of vengeance. The burden of truth had burned his skin like sun on bare earth. But from the ashes, something different had risen. Clarity. He sat beneath the same roof that had betrayed him. The same walls that once hummed with lies now echoed with expectation. His wife moved to the house like a whisper avoiding guilt. Her laughter, once soft as wine, was now nervous, brittle like clay left too long in the sun. And Dapo, the orphan-turned-son, turned stranger, walked with boldness. But even boldness wears thin when the spirit of the house refuses to greet you. They felt something shifting. They could not name it. But ancestors always know when a storm is near. That evening, the sky wept, not in torrents of rage, no. The rain fell softly, like tears from a tired god watching his children ruin themselves. Thunder did not shout, it mourned. Ikeen stood in the center of the sitting room, the same room where empires had been negotiated, where toasts had once been raised to love. The chandelier above flickered like a nervous candle. The floor beneath him seemed to hold its breath. He did not summon them with noise. He simply waited, and like spirits drawn to sacred drums, they arrived. Adana entered first. Her perfume, once sweet with desire, now smelled of desperation and dread. Depo followed behind, the confidence in his step slowly unraveling with every beat of silence. Then Ikeen opened his eyes, fully, for the first time in weeks. Not the eyes that sit on the face, but the true eyes, the ancestral sight, the one that sees beyond the flesh, beyond the masks we wear, into the trembling core of who we are when no one is watching. Sit. His spirit seemed to whisper, though no word was spoken. And they did. She on the far left, he on the far right. A chasm of shame between them. Ikeen's eyes met Adana's first, and she shattered, not physically, but like a drum whose skin has been overbeaten. Her soul gave a soundless cry, for there, in his gaze, was no anger, no shouting, no fire, just the unbearable calm of truth. He looked at Depo next, the boy he had raised with hands that had once known hunger, a child he had bathed with his own hands, clothed with money born from sleepless nights and bleeding ambition. Depo could not hold a gaze. He looked away, but still felt the heat. For nothing burns like dignity returned without demand. Then Ikeen spoke, but not with his mouth. His silence spoke. He walked into the room's far corner and returned with something wrapped in aged cloth, the color of ancestral earth. He placed it on the table. Slowly, deliberately, he unwrapped it. Inside was a small mirror, not one of silver and glass, but one carved from the bark of the spirit tree, the kind seen only in dreams and passed down through sacred bloodlines. It did not reflect faces. It reflected hearts. He placed it before them. Adana looked, then trembled, for in the mirror, she did not see beauty. She saw the hollow woman she'd become, once a songbird, now a crow gnawing at corpses of love. Depo looked, then turned away. He saw not the charming man he thought he was, but a child who had stolen bread from the same hand that fed him. The room remained still, until Ikeen whispered only 6 words, words that carried more weight than a lifetime of sermons. I was never blind to begin. And then he turned, walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the rain. The guards tried to follow. The staff begged to speak. But Ikeen raised a single hand, and even the wind obeyed. He did not raise his voice. He did not curse them. He left, not in shame, but in sacred silence. For true power does not need a stage. It walks away while the world watches, confused, breathless, broken. Weeks passed, then months. Adana stayed in the mansion, but it felt more like a mausoleum. No laughter echoed. No music flowed. She walked barefoot across marble floors, trying to feel something, anything, but the ground felt colder than her heart. Depo tried to rebuild, moved into a new home, flaunted new cars, surrounded himself with hollow praise. But nothing stuck. Deals fell through. Friends disappeared. And in the mirror of every morning, he saw Ikeen's eyes, not judging, just watching. A year passed, then another. Then Lagos began to whisper again. This time, not about betrayal, but about a man seen under a mango tree in Makoko, teaching street boys how to count coins, read contracts, and plant yams in hidden patches of land. They said he wore white. Simple buba and sokoto. No gold, no guards, just a staff in hand and peace in his eyes. Children gathered around him like ants to sugar. He gave them nothing they could spend, but everything they could become. They called him Baba, that sees without eyes. One day, a journalist found him. Are you not Ikeen, the billionaire? He smiled, then pointed to boys playing in the red sand. I was once blind, he said, but now I see. He chose to see again, but never looked back.